What is it like to run against a stalwart of British politics? Well, one man who knows how that feels is Rory Stewart, who ran against him in 2019 when he was still a Conservative before Boris Johnson removed the whip from him. Rory, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Um, First of all, in terms of your parliamentary career, you've seen a couple of Conservative PMs go. First in David Cameron willingly, Theresa May less so. Um, does this look and smell to you like it's the beginning of the end game here for a third?
I think so, because it's difficult to see him taking the Conservative Party into the next election. His popularity ratings are now pretty dreadful. And I think he's very wounded and damaged. And this is a party that, above all, likes to win. It's a party which sees itself as the most successful political party in the world. And its success is based on the fact that it's very ruthless at getting rid of leaders. So I suspect that the May elections will demonstrate that Boris has lost his magic, and MPs will then conclude that there's no point staying behind him. And in a way, that's almost more important than the details of the Partygate investigation.
Well, you know what it's like to run against him, both kind of personally in the interaction of it, but also the idea within the membership that he's a born winner and therefore he's the man. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, it's an amazing experience. I mean, I think you yourself looked seriously at running to be prime minister at one point. And one of
Nope.
the things that
Never been in the government, never wanted it.
never,
No.
come on, everybody had your name in the running. And what you would have picked up, whatever reason you decided not to go for it, one of the things that's very clear for all of us is simply the logistics side. I think that's something that's difficult for the public necessarily to pick up. Of course, what you see, and people would have seen in the leadership debates that I and Sajid Javid and Michael Gove and Jeremy Hunt did against Boris Johnson, that side of it, you see the policy, you see the ideas, you see the personalities, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Behind it is an incredible amount of organization. People are running spreadsheets with hundreds of MPs on them, trying to talk them over one after another. There are huge social media campaigns going on. I was just reminded that Dominic Raab, who ran against Boris in the last leadership campaign, which I was in, spent £52,000 on testing messages on Facebook before the race even started. So somewhere at the back of this will be all these people, and you can expect it probably happening around Rishi Sunak, around Jeremy Hunt, and around many others too. Tom Tugendhat, Sajid Javid, etc., will be talking to donors, will be thinking about how they get very serious sums of money together. And that's one of the problems, money in politics. They'll have to get hundreds of thousands of pounds together. They'll have to build big social media teams. And then they'll have to do this relentless job of trying to persuade MPs one after another. And then, of course, the Conservative Party in the country, because it's a two-stage process. You've got to win the MPs, and then you've got to win the Conservative Party in the country. He's an extraordinary figure from that point of view. I mean, he obviously has lived a life of amazing rickety chaos in which he has been fired from 2 jobs for lying, in which he's been through incredible media scandals to do with his private life. And I suppose he's concluded at the end of more than 30 years of being in the public eye that he's almost indestructible. His default is never to resign, never really to fall on his sword, but just keep pushing on and hope that something will turn out for the best. And he feels, I suppose, like somebody who feels as though in the end, if he just sticks to his guns, it's all going to come fine. But at the same time, as you say, he's somebody who appears increasingly miserable. This cannot have been what he dreamt of. He's somebody with very sort of romantic, strange, classical views on what it means to be prime minister. He has this great bust of the Greek political hero Pericles in his room. He tends to think in these sort of grand historical terms. And what he's actually doing is living out the relentless horror of daily political life and realizing that he can't really charm his way out of this. He's charmed his way out of almost everything else, but I think he's reaching the moment at which his charm is coming to an end.
But it does still, just because of the system we have, require a cohort of his peers to pull the trigger. And it seems to me that the momentum for that is pretty low still.
That's right. The Conservative Party is, of course, along with being ruthless, is very loyal until it's ruthless. And people are, of course, worried about losing their seats. But there's a sense of tribal loyalty. So the more that people are attacking the Prime Minister, and I feel this myself, I think the Prime Minister is a terrible human being, a terrible Prime Minister, so I'm out there attacking him all the time. And what I'm feeling from my former colleagues, of course, is immense defensiveness and anxiety. Nobody likes to see one of their leaders being attacked. So in the short term, what that means is that the more that Keir Starmer attacks him, the more that people like me attack him, the more likely they are to try to gather around him. They don't like to feel bullied and pushed into getting rid of their leader. But I think as things settle down, very, very many other considerations will come in. And those include actually moral considerations. It's interesting how in the debate yesterday, the number of members of parliament who started quoting the Bible, there's an element, Steve Baker, for example, one of the leading Brexiteers, is also a very prominent Christian, I think a Christian preacher. And clearly it's the moral problems around Boris that are beginning to come through. And that has echoes of Trump, who also was an odd figure in the fact that he managed to get a lot of the Christian evangelical right in the United States behind him, despite having a pretty shabby private life. And I think the same paradoxes are beginning to tear Boris apart.
Well, it's certainly something that we can watch both sides of the Atlantic over the next coming weeks and months. Thank you so much for joining us, former MP Rory Stewart there.